Principles Show daily podcast by and for you.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into some pretty cool green initiatives happening over in Egypt. We're talking about the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and their plan for a more sustainable future for the country. We're going to be looking at an article from the BRICS joint website, that platform that's all about collaboration between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These nations are really becoming major players in global development, so their perspective on this is super interesting, right?
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting about this article is it shows just how much UNIDO is investing. We're talking a surprisingly large investment here.
Oh yeah, like how much are we talking?
Well, hold on to your hats, because UNIDO is pumping a whopping $58 million into 23 different projects in Egypt, all aimed at making industries more energy efficient and environmentally friendly.
$58 million. Whoa, that's not messing around. It seems like UNIDO is really serious about making Egypt a leader in sustainable development. What's the significance of this investment level, though?
It's a huge deal. I mean, it really shows UNIDO's commitment to making actual changes on the ground to the way industries in Egypt operate. This isn't just about setting some far-off goals. It's about putting resources where they're needed to actually make those goals a reality.
Okay, so let's dive into some specifics. It looks like a major focus of these projects is on making industries like fertilizer, iron, and steel less energy intensive. The article mentions that UNIDO is working directly with factories to implement these changes. They're partnering with organizations like the Industrial Modernization Center and the National Cleaner Production Center.
Yeah, and that hands-on approach is really key here, because it's not enough to just tell industries, hey, you need to be more energy efficient.
Right.
They need the guidance, support, and expertise to actually make those targets happen. It's kind of like having a personal trainer for sustainability. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like having someone right there with you, showing you how to do it and cheering you on. So it's about empowering these industries to make those lasting changes. But it's not all about heavy industry, is it? The article also talks about UNIDO's involvement in some broader green initiatives. They're working with the Egyptian Ministry of Environment on a project called Green City, which I have to admit I'm not familiar with. What is Green City all about?
Oh, Green City is fascinating. It's focused on transforming those popular tourist destinations into models of energy efficiency and ecotourism. They're putting strategies in place to reduce energy consumption in hotels and resorts, promote things like sustainable transportation options, and protect those fragile marine ecosystems. Imagine going to a tourist spot where you can enjoy all the beauty and excitement, but without the guilt of leaving a huge environmental footprint.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And then there's this inclusive green growth initiative. The article mentioned it's specifically designed to help those small and medium-sized enterprises adopt more eco-friendly practices.
Yeah.
I never realized how much potential SMEs have in driving sustainable change.
Oh, they're absolutely crucial. I mean, SMEs are often the backbone of an economy. So when they embrace sustainability, the positive impact can be felt throughout the entire country. This inclusive green growth initiative is giving them the tools and resources they need to make those changes. It's interesting, though, they're really focusing on Upper Egypt and prioritizing food industries and renewable energy there. It's a great example of targeting specific regions and sectors where you can have the most impact.
That's really smart, focusing on where you can make the biggest difference. And get this, UNIDO is also working on this really ambitious project to create sustainable industrial zones. What exactly does that involve?
Think of it like an eco-makeover for industrial areas. They're transforming these zones to meet much higher environmental standards. This includes implementing some pretty cool technologies, like waste heat recovery systems.
Waste heat recovery.
Yeah. It captures excess heat generated by industrial processes and then uses that heat to power other parts of the operation. It's all about making the entire system more efficient.
Whoa, that's incredible. It's like factories powering themselves with their own waste heat. And alongside this, they've got a trade project in motion aimed at boosting the global competitiveness of Egyptian manufacturing.
Yeah, this project is all about showing the world that Egyptian products can be both high quality and sustainably produced. Changing that perception of made in Egypt to represent innovation and environmental responsibility. Today's consumers are much more aware of where their products come from and the environmental impact of those products. This initiative is helping Egyptian businesses tap into that growing demand for sustainable goods. It's about creating a win-win for everyone, good for the planet and good for the economy.
Okay, so we've got UNIDO investing heavily in these green initiatives. They're working directly with industries to implement changes. and even collaborating with the Egyptian Ministry of Environment. But it sounds like they're not doing this alone. The article mentions some serious government backing for these efforts, especially in the realm of renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely. The Egyptian government is fully on board with this green transformation, particularly when it comes to renewable energy. They've set a really ambitious target. I think it's something like 42% of their electricity coming from renewable sources by 2035.
42% by 2035. Wow. That's a pretty aggressive goal. What are they doing to make that happen?
They're investing a lot in solar and wind energy projects, and that's where the collaboration with UNIDO really shines. They're working together to boost local production of the components needed for these renewable energy systems. Things like solar panels and wind turbines. It's not just about importing technology, it's about building a domestic industry around it.
So they're not just generating cleaner energy, they're also creating jobs and a whole new sector of the economy around it. That's a really smart strategy for long-term sustainability.
Yeah, it really is. And what's fascinating is that it goes beyond just importing the technology. It's about building a whole robust domestic industry around renewable energy. This creates jobs, boosts the economy, and it reduces their reliance on those foreign suppliers.
It's incredible to see this level of commitment from both UNIDO and the Egyptian government. It's like they're building an entire ecosystem of sustainability, from individual factories to entire industrial zones and their national energy policies. But what does all of this actually mean for the people who live in Egypt? How are these initiatives affecting their daily lives?
That is a fantastic question, and it's the perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. When we come back, we'll explore the human impact of all these initiatives, from the new jobs being created to the improvements in health and well-being. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we jump into the human side of all this, I'm still really curious about those sustainable industrial zones. You mentioned some pretty cool technologies like those waste heat recovery systems. How do they actually go about transforming a whole industrial area to meet these higher environmental standards?
It's a really multifaceted approach. It goes way beyond just reducing pollution. It's about changing how these industries operate from the ground up, making them more sustainable at their core. One of the key things is resource optimization. That means using water and energy as efficiently as possible and minimizing waste.
So they're not just trying to patch up the existing system, they're actually redesigning the whole thing.
Exactly. And that includes bringing in cleaner production technologies, like those waste heat recovery systems we talked about. Imagine a factory that can actually use the excess heat from its own processes to power other parts of its operation. That's a total game changer. And then there are environmental management systems. These help businesses track their environmental impact and make constant improvements.
So it's like a continuous cycle of improvement, always striving to be more sustainable. And how does that trade project we discussed tie into all of this?
Well, that's where the economic benefits come in. By helping these Egyptian industries become more sustainable, UNIDO is also making them more competitive in the global market.
So it's not just about being environmentally responsible. It's also about making Egyptian businesses more successful in the long run.
Exactly. Consumers are way more conscious now about the environmental impact of what they buy. So by producing things sustainably, Egyptian businesses can tap into that growing market and really gain a competitive edge. It's that win-win situation again. Good for the planet and good for the economy.
I like it. Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Now let's circle back to those government initiatives, especially their ambitious goals for renewable energy. The article mentioned they want 42% of their electricity from renewables by 2035. How are they planning to achieve that?
Well, they're making huge investments in solar and wind energy projects. And that collaboration with UNIDO we talked about is really crucial here. They're working together to boost local production of the components they need for these renewable energy systems. So instead of just importing the tech, they're building a whole domestic industry around it.
So it's more than just building solar farms and wind turbines. It's about creating a whole new part of the economy.
That's right. And that means more jobs, more investment, and a more secure energy future for Egypt. Plus, it positions them as a leader in the renewable energy sector, which could attract even more foreign investment and boost their economy even further.
Yeah, it's like a snowball effect. All these positive changes building on each other. It's amazing to see how all these different initiatives connect and how they're creating this ripple effect of positive change throughout the Egyptian economy. But I'm really curious to hear more about the human side of this. How are all these efforts impacting the lives of everyday Egyptians?
That's a great question. It's something we often overlook when we talk about these big initiatives, but at the end of the day, it's all about improving the lives of the people living and working in Egypt.
Absolutely. So let's get into that human impact. What are some of the ways these green initiatives are actually affecting people on the ground?
Well, first and foremost, these initiatives are creating jobs. The transition to a more sustainable economy needs a skilled workforce. And that means new opportunities for Egyptians in areas like renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and green manufacturing. And these aren't just any jobs. They're often higher paying with better working conditions.
So it's not just about saving the environment, it's about creating real economic opportunities and improving people's lives.
Exactly. And those benefits go beyond just the individual workers. When people have more money, they spend it in their communities, which further stimulates the economy.
That's like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Everyone benefits. What about the impact on health and well-being? I imagine cleaner industries and a shift to renewables would be good for people's health.
You're absolutely right. By reducing pollution and promoting cleaner production, these initiatives are helping create a healthier environment for everyone in Egypt. Cleaner air and water mean fewer respiratory problems, lower healthcare costs, and a better overall quality of life.
It's amazing to think that these green initiatives can have such a real and positive impact on people's lives. It's not just some abstract concept. It's about real people breathing cleaner air, finding better jobs, and feeling more hopeful about the future.
And speaking of hope, that's another crucial aspect of all this. When people see their government and industries taking action on sustainability, it gives them a sense that things are moving in the right direction. It creates a sense of optimism and a shared vision for a better future.
That's so important. It's about empowering people to be part of the solution, rather than just feeling helpless in the face of these global challenges.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what's really inspiring about Egypt's approach is that they're not just imposing these changes from the top down. They're actively involving communities, businesses, and individuals in the process, creating a sense of ownership and shared responsibility.
It sounds like they're building a really solid foundation for a brighter future. But these efforts also have implications beyond Egypt's borders, don't they? Egypt's a major player in the Middle East and North Africa. What kind of ripple effect could their success have on other countries in the region?
That's a great point. Egypt's success in transitioning to a more sustainable model could definitely serve as a blueprint for other countries. They're showing that sustainable development is not only possible, but it's also beneficial, both economically and socially.
So they're leading by example.
Exactly. And it's not just about setting an example. It's about actively collaborating and sharing knowledge with other countries. UNIDO is playing a big role in this knowledge exchange, helping other countries learn from what Egypt's doing and adapt their own strategies for a more sustainable future.
It's really inspiring to see this kind of global collaboration happening. But let's zoom in for a minute and talk about the role of consumers in all of this. You mentioned earlier that people are increasingly demanding sustainable products. What are some examples of how this is playing out in the real world?
We're seeing it in almost every industry. One of the most obvious examples is the rise of electric vehicles. More and more people are choosing cars that are less reliant on fossil fuels. And this demand is driving a lot of innovation and investment in the electric vehicle market. And it's not just in transportation either. We see it in the fashion industry too. You see brands promoting sustainable materials and ethical production practices more and more these days. Consumers want to know where their clothes are coming from and how they were made.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole new level of awareness around how we consume things. People are starting to think about the impact of their choices.
Exactly. And even in the food industry, there's that growing demand for organic and locally sourced produce. People are more aware of the environmental and health impacts of their food.
It's amazing to see this shift happening. It's like sustainability is finally becoming mainstream.
It is, and it's putting pressure on businesses to change too. If they want to stay competitive, they have to show they care about sustainability.
So it's not just about doing the right thing ethically anymore. It's actually good for business too.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful driver for change. When being sustainable helps a business thrive, it's way more likely to stick around.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that we can build a more sustainable future without sacrificing economic growth. Actually, the two can go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And that's what's so exciting about what's happening in Egypt. They're showing everyone that sustainable development can actually boost economic prosperity. It doesn't have to hold it back.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive, from the details of UNIDO's projects to the impacts on people's lives.
Yeah.
And even the role consumers play. It's been fascinating.
It really has. And I think it's clear that Egypt is leading the way when it comes to this global shift towards sustainability.
Their story is so hopeful. It shows that a more sustainable future is possible.
It's a real testament to the power of collaboration and innovation and people coming together with that shared vision.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm definitely feeling optimistic and inspired.
Me too. It reminds us that we all have a role to play in building that sustainable future.
So what can our listeners do in their own lives and work to contribute to this?
Every little thing we do makes a difference.
Yeah, whether it's choosing sustainable products, supporting businesses that are doing the right thing, or just talking to others about these issues.
Absolutely. Let's all try to make more conscious choices and work together to create a world where everyone and everything can thrive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into UNIDO's work in Egypt. I hope you've learned some new things and feel empowered to make a difference.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep pushing for a more sustainable future.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating journey into the world of knowledge and discovery.